So now I'm going to talk about the technical details of my project. I'm going to start off with the excavation and go in order. So I always wanted to do the walkout basement because I wanted a feasible tornado shelter. We live in eastern Colorado, on the plains of eastern Colorado, and 2 summers ago we survived our first tornado out here in Simla, Colorado. Luckily our house didn't blow down, but it came close. And so sitting down in the tornado shelter, I was thinking, well, what happens if my house falls in on me? I've got no way to get out. So it's always been a goal of mine to make an exterior exit from the basement. So if we're sitting down taking refuge from a tornado and the house blows down, we'll have a better chance of getting out. Right after my baby daughter was born this summer, middle of July, started the excavation. Didn't have a lot to do because I teach school. We get out of school for the summers, which is probably one of the reasons I decided to become a teacher, so I could have my summers off. Side jobs were slow, and so I thought, what better time to start the walkout basement than now? And so started digging like a fool. Had my kids down there one day. We had a little bit of fun. And right now I think we're about, probably 8 feet below grade. We went down about 9 feet. Now, if you'll notice this is my existing foundation wall, which was garbage, by the way. I have no idea why they had left lumber in the foundation when they poured it. It's like that all over the house. It's just garbage, and so the ants and the children of the earth and all the bugs would crawl in. But fortunate for me, I had planned to make my door there where the foundation was already weakened. You see where these two, I guess they had cast in 2x6s in there at one time, and they had rotted out. So of course the foundation is weak right there. So that's where I planned to put my door. So then we dug more, and we dug more, and we kept on digging, and I was losing weight, and I was sweating like crazy. And I thought, well, now I don't have to go running. I don't have to lift weights. I've got my exercise taken care of. And the summer progressed. And we kept digging and digging. And my back became very sore. And my morale lessened day by day. And finally, a few days before school started, I said, I'm sick of digging. I'm going to spend the $200 or whatever and get me a little bobcat. So I rented a little mini excavator. And I finished the excavation. Well, it's a good thing that I started digging by hand because, as you will see right here on this side of the screen where my arrow is, I had defined the steps, I had defined the depth, and I got real close to the house with my shovel so I didn't knock through that old foundation with the bucket. You know, I'm not a backhoe operator either, but I know how to use one anyway. But luckily I had started digging it by hand, and so all I had to do was dig this part with the little mini excavator, and it didn't take a lot of skill. I just had to make sure I didn't get too close to the edge, crumble the edge off, and fall down in the hole with the excavator and kill myself. And so the mini excavator was the way to go. I probably should have rented it from the beginning, but you know, if I would have done that, I probably would have ended up digging a lot more than I needed to, and I probably would have had to go and backfill a lot more because by digging by hand, I knew exactly how far I needed to go down, and I was able to define the boundaries of my excavation. I'm an avid gardener, by the way. I don't know why that's in there, but you see my beautiful corn stalks. And so we got her all excavated, got the ramp built up, because I knew I was going to have to get the concrete truck high enough so that it would be able to pour my walls, because I knew my walls were going to come up pretty high and I was not going to get a pump truck out there. I thought about it, but then I thought, no, that's not a good option. So you could see that, one day I finished, well, probably 2 days. I rented the excavator for the weekend or whatever, and then in 2 days I finished digging all this out with the excavator. This is how I kept the bugs and the rats and everything from getting in our house during the summer. I just plasticed over it, and it took me a lot of time, because I had to, every single day I would work on this project. If I wanted to come out through the basement, I had to cut through the plastic and then tape it back up. Huge waste of time, but that's just what happens when you have a project like this, because we're living in the house the whole time, and so I'm not going to have bugs and rats coming in the house. So you can see my boy, he's just loving the excavator. Had a lot of fun with him that day. And so we got it all excavated. Let's talk about the footers. So then the next thing that came was the footers. Well, I have another video that I'm going to put in this segment, and it's going to tell how wide all my footers are, how deep it is below grade. But really, I just want to explain that I formed my footers up with OSB and 2x4s, and I just left them in the ground because I couldn't get them out later. I said, well, whatever, it's going to stay there. So it stayed, because my excavation was too close, really. I should have left myself a lot more room with the excavation, but then again, I hand dug almost everything, and so that's just less digging to do. So it is what it is. It worked out just fine, but I was not able to salvage the lumber for the forms. But who cares? And I just want to show my rebar here. Got my rebar. I like to put it in before they pour it. That way you get it all tied in with the the horizontal rebars, and then you're not trying to stab it down in wet concrete. This shows all my footers. They won't really make sense to you. I know where they all are, and you'll see them in the next video, but I just wanted to document the footer width in case the building inspector ever came sniffing around and said, how come you never showed me these footers? Because I called him, I consulted him another time when he came out to my house for a propane project, and then I said, hey, I'm thinking of putting a walkout basement here. And I told him my idea, and he said, all right, well, when you're ready to go, just let me know, and we'll talk about the footers and blah, blah, blah. So I called him, left a message, never got back with me, so I said, I'm not going to wait on this guy, because it took him long enough to come out for my propane project. I'm not going to sit here and wait till winter for him to come and prove my project, so I just did it. I just went for it. And it's done now, so I guess they can throw me in prison or whatever, and I don't know what they're going to do, but I've got it all documented, all my rebar spacing, all my footing sizes. And yes, I overkilled the footings on the bigger walls, because I'm not going to pay an engineer for that. I thought, well, I'm not an engineer. I'm not going to try to cheap out either. The money I would have paid an engineer, I'll just add more concrete and more rebar and overkill it, and make 100% sure that this is not going to crumble, that it's going to retain the earth like it's supposed to, and so I overkilled it. But if I would have had more experience with footers and walls, then I probably could have cut back a lot on concrete and rebar. But whatever, it's in, so it's functional, and time will tell whether or not it cracks or what it does. I really don't think it will, though, because I've overkilled it. And there you see how I came around with my footer into the house. That's where I had my plastic over the opening so the bugs couldn't get in, and it was a pain to work around all that and have to re-plastic it every night and put foam insulation there so the mosquitoes wouldn't come in. But that's how these little projects go when you're living in the same house. And I got myself a little rebar bender. It was a good investment for this project because I was able to make all those 90s on my rebar bender. And the rebar is just so much stronger because if you just try to cut it right there and cut it right there and tie it with baling wire, it's never going to hold. And so that bender was the right tool for this project. So here is my my footing video, and I'll put it in another one later so you can see how the footers go. You know, I'll just show you. Who cares? I know you can't hear it. It's just showing the position, and my helper takes me around and he shows, you know, look, that footing's 20 inches deep. Look how overkill that is. It's like 40 inches wide. That's absolutely ridiculous. Look at that. For those taller walls, it's like 40 inches wide. And then as it comes up, of course, I got my rebar in there about every 18 inches on center, I think. See, look, it's 43 inches wide. That's overkill, but I don't want the wall to tip over, so I put a big footer under it. And look at my little cage right there. Look at my rebar cage right there. Just I wanted to make sure that I got nice rebar in my footers, and I did. And then you see how my foundation steps up. I stepped it up like that because I'm not going to put the footer at the same level and just have, 6 feet of concrete just buried doing nothing. So I stepped it up in my excavation. That's how they do it. That's how the right way to do it. And then check that out. Look at all that. Those are my step ups. And I had a little problem because originally this footer right here, like I started the step right here, but then I started thinking, I said, you know what, that's not going to work because when I do my stairs, that footer is going to be higher than the stairs. So I had to demo this footer right here and push it back so that the footer wasn't sticking up above the stairs. So anyway, I'm just going through and showing where my rebar is, blah, 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 what else? And then showing that footer width. And I'm showing my, how far my footers are down. Like this one right here. It's 4 feet down below grade to the bottom of my footing. I only have to be 3 feet down. So I'm plenty far below the frost line on all my footers. Wanted to make sure that the building inspector got that in case he ever came out. And then what else is in here? Just more footer widths, more rebar spacing. And what's this showing? Look, that's a nice shot right there. Look at that. Bam. See how wide those footers are? That's for those 10-inch walls, those 13-foot high walls. That's why they're so wide right there. Again, they're probably wider than they need to be, but who cares? It's not like I can go back and add a wider footing later. You just can't do that. You got to do it all at once, and so that's what I did. And that footer right there, this little wall right here, that's plenty wide too, and that's and then later I get an 8-foot wall on top of that. So I'm way down farther than I need to be, but it's going to be in a garage, and so I don't want somebody to come and crash the vehicle into it and crumble the wall and go falling down into the hole. So I made these footers as strong as I thought I needed to. What else is in this video? You see those chutes right there? See, because I knew I could never get my concrete truck close enough to the hole, and I don't want to have the truck falling down in the hole. So what I did is I got sewer pipes, 12-inch sewer pipes, and I cut them down lengthwise, and then I dumped the concrete. Come back right there. I dumped the concrete into the sewer pipes, and that's how I filled up my footers. So it worked out really well. What else is going on here? And more spacing. And then that's more steps. What else do we have in here? that's basically it. I just had to make sure that you see my little string right there? Right there. That string is telling me, because I came off my house, and that's keeping my foundation straight with the rest of the house. And so then I measured off this string. I measured off all the way for that far wall. I think I even ran a string in through the basement so that these walls are parallel or close enough to parallel. And then I knew that my foundation was going to come out here about 3 inches farther than that framing. And so then I just measured off my 5 foot here, and that told me. And then I thought, well, I got to have my wall centered on my footer, so that told me where to put my wall. And then this wall, like I say, I wanted to just come down flush with this wall off the framing, but I couldn't do that because how am I going to get concrete in there if I just came flush? So that's why I had to come out about 3 inches so we could just shovel our concrete down there and fill that up. Now, I want you to look at this. Yes, that's a crack. This foundation is garbage. It's just cracked all the pieces. It's not even on a footing. This is just garbage. Garbage. And so how do I rectify that? Well, I'll pour a new foundation in front of it. I'll just make it thicker. I'm building a new house around an old piece of junk. That's what I'm doing. And so you'll see this later, that I came with my rebar and I doweled into this foundation right here. And so then this old crappy foundation is tied into my new reinforced foundation, and nobody's ever going to know that there's a crack there anymore. And it doesn't matter anymore because I have a brand new, stronger foundation in front of it anyway. And plus, there's probably not going to be any weight from the framing bearing on this anyway, because it's probably going to be a non-bearing wall right here. So really, this whole wall is just for cosmetics. And then also another reason I decided to bring it out is because when you're walking up the stairs, I don't want to hit my head on that meter right there. So that's why I brought the lower wall out right there. You'll see that later, so just watch for that. And just a nice little shot showing you everything, what my footers looked like before the truck came out to pour. And I'm going to put you back here, and I want to just let this sink in right here. Get a nice view of that and let it sink in, see what those look like. Right there, look at that. It's just, those footies are everywhere, turning, stepping up, just crazy. It looks a lot more complicated than it is. You just have to remember, my walls are going to be 5 feet wide, so that's, where to put your footers. Just center the walls under the footers, or get it as close as possible, so that's what I did. Alright, I think we're done talking about the footers. Now, let's move to the retaining wall. This is where it gets scary, and I'll tell you why later. So, what do we have here? Again, this is just another little video I took trying to document the spacing of my rebar placement. But you can see it's only 23 seconds long because my camera ran out of battery. And so, really, this is just going to be me showing you my rebar spacing and my forms. And then you can see my ramp and how I went out and everything. So then the battery ran out of the camera. So let's just go through and look at the pictures. Let's try this one right here. Alright, so it looks like in most places I tried for a 12-inch on center grid. 12-inch, 18, somewhere like that. But look, I told you that I doweled into the existing foundation, and then I've got my grid right here, because they're coming up from my footer, so that ties everything together. And like I say there's no footer right here. This is garbage. And for some reason, I think here's what happened. When they were building the house, originally they just had this little crawl space right here, maybe a 2 or 3 foot crawl space. And then somebody said, I want a basement. So they dug a basement. and so they stepped on the inside of the house. They stepped the foundation out so they could dig their basement out without the whole house falling in on them. So that's what all this dirt crap is. But even though they stepped the foundation, there's still no footer. It's garbage. There's still no footer under this. This is just the foundation wall resting on dirt. So I came back and I put footers for all my foundation walls. Look at those big, heavy footers that I have in there. That's what you're supposed to do. And then you ask me, well, what's that? Well, that's my ground wire from my electrical service, because I put a brand new electrical service in, and they say you're supposed to, the best way to ground your electrical service is to put a, I forgot that there's initials for it, but it basically just means you go into your concrete. And so I had already gone into the earth with this, and I thought, well, great, I'll just bury that in concrete. So I left this inside my forms. So I'm totally grounded in here inside my concrete, and it even goes down farther into the earth. And then you see how my my bars bend out right there, and then of course I just left them long right here. That's all I did, and I got my whatever this, that might be 2 foot spacing on this wall. I don't remember. It's just this wall is not so high. It's only a 7 feet wall, and it's not really much of a retaining wall, so I didn't have to put a lot of steel in this wall. And so let's talk about my form construction. I've got these down on my line, and then I just go and build a wall on top of those. It's not the best way to do it. I'm going to tell you, I had problems. My forms blew out, and I almost lost this whole project. And you'll see what happened later. But next time I'll do it, I will form it better. This is showing you where the walls come and turn around in the basement, because I tied this into my basement. Because here's what happened. When I cut my hole, I cut the hole a lot wider than it had to be, because I knew there was no way I was going to get a nice straight hole, and I didn't. You can see that. Look at that crooked, ugly cut. How am I supposed to get a door in there? So I just cut it bigger, and then I thought, well, I'll just bring my walls out, and I'll make a nice, clean edge white right here so I can install my doors. And that's exactly what I did. Here's the other side. Look at that cut. Look how horrible that is. I had to cut it from one side with the demo saw, then from the other side with the demo saw, and guess what? My cuts didn't line up. So now what do? Well, I got my drill, and I drilled through every inch, and then I drilled up, and I basically cut the whole foundation out with my hammer drill. And yes, it took hours and hours to do that. And then I just smashed it down with the sledgehammer, and it fell out. Yes, it took a long time to do it, but that's just what happens, because the foundation was way too thick for that demo blade, so I had to make 2 cuts. And I knew I was going to have a bad cut, and so I thought, well, I'll just cut the hole bigger, and then I'll build my new foundation, and I'll make a nice, clean, square opening. And you'll see that later when my door goes in. And luckily, my forms did not blow out where I went to put my door, and I'll tell you where they blew out. Okay, so here's showing more rebar. You can see I got my grid there. I'm tied in. And right there, I'm starting around there with my grid. I haven't quite got it. Got me some diesel fuel there. That's what I used to lubricate the forms with. It didn't quite work so well because I put it on when I started. And then it took me about a month to get the whole thing formed up. And then I think by that time all the diesel had disintegrated off, but whatever. I mean, I tried, right? It's better than nothing. And then that's my opening for my doorway. And I just made sure this was strong because I didn't want all the wet concrete collapsing down. And it didn't blow out right there either. So you see I'm making progress with my grid. And what else? That's all 1/2-inch rebar. So then what's this? I'll tell you what it is. I knew that I had to get my concrete truck up higher. And actually, when I brought the concrete truck in for the footers, luckily I had a really, how do I explain this guy? I mean, I couldn't have got a better driver. He was just nuts, man. He was just crazy, and he didn't care. And he saw my ramp. He's like, yeah, it's a little bit sketchy. It'll probably give out on me, but what the hell? And he just went for it. And I was watching, and the the truck almost tipped over is what happened. And luckily it didn't, he leveled it out, but I just got really uneasy when that happened. And I thought, you know what, when these trucks come out to pour my walls, this ramp is not doing the trick. I got to have dirt brought in. So I had the local gravel company here bring in some fill dirt, and then they spread it around with their loaders, so I made my ramp a lot fatter and a lot wider, and so that was not going to happen again when they came out to pour the walls. And there's my kids. They just love playing out in the dirt and love helping me in the dirt. So they did. Well, I mean, really, they're just playing right there because we didn't have to spread that around. Like I say, the gravel company came out and they pushed that dirt around for me with their loader, and they fixed up my ramp, and then the ramp held just fine for the other trucks when they came out to pour the walls. There's more rebar. Just wanted to show that I got her all tied up before I put that other form on. Look at my studs. This is insane. I'm probably 8 inches on center with my studs. 3/4 plywood. I knew the concrete was going to exert a tremendous amount of force, and so I just did everything I could to make it strong so it wouldn't bow the forms out. And that's just showing I'm 1 foot on center with my grid there. And more playing in the dirt. There's my grid. That's as high up as my walls went. And see, look, all those studs. I just tried to make it as strong as possible. And moving on up with the forms, I got my string there, not quite done right there. But just so you know, this is where my blowout happened right here. I had a little hinge point right here because this is a full wall going all the way down. Then I had a little tiny wall right here, and that's where it blew out because I did not brace it right there. I overlooked that point, and that's where it blew out. I'll show you later. This is just showing that I got my rebar inside my forms, and then later I came back and I strung it and I built those forms up. And that's just showing me going up with my forms, building them on up. And they came out I ordered 24 yards of concrete for my walls. And I didn't quite use it all, but luckily I ordered heavy like that because I did have a blowout. And when you have a blowout, then it's just more concrete that it takes to fill your forms up. Now, luckily I did not have a complete, total, 100% failure because then it would have been really bad. I would have been running that mini excavator again, and I would have been burying all my forms, all the discarded concrete. I would have just had to fill this hole up and bury it because there's no way I was ever going to get it out of there. So didn't have a total failure, just had a partial failure. And I'll show you, this is what it looks like. This is the failure, okay? That right there, bam, started blowing out, started freaking out. It was the most stressful day of my life. I had a lot at stake. Because right here, this concrete you're looking at almost $4,000 right there. And so it went wrong. That's just flushing $4,000 down the toilet. And luckily at the end of the day, all the concrete was vertical. But I didn't get a picture of this, but I had built a floor. I basically built a floor right up here so that we could access the higher part of the forms. And this wall right here where I had that floor, it stayed pretty darn straight. This wall stayed straight right here, but I forgot to put a brace right down there where that little stupid hinge point was, and that's where it started blowing out. Now, my big problem was I had got my concrete vibrator, and I was vibrating this as it went. And I'm not experienced at this point, I was not experienced in concrete placement, and I was letting those trucks dictate my pace, and I had not put enough space in between the trucks either. I think I had maybe an hour space in between trucks, and I probably should have put like a 3-hour space in between trucks. Just took my sweet time, poured the concrete, and I should have just went around like this and filled it up, came back and filled this up. But I was stupid, and I just started bombing this wall and filled it all the way up with one truck. and that's when I heard those popping, cracking sounds, and you know your forms are blowing out. And I've got high school kids up here, and I'm thinking, man, if this goes down, I've got all my concrete coming down in this hole. I've got high school kids falling down here. I'm falling down there. And it's just a nightmare. But I did have a friend of mine. He was helping me. He came out later to help, and we went down after the first truck got out of there, and then we came back and we braced this. We just braced it up just to keep this lame wall from falling over, and then later we came and filled it up. And then you can see this right here. Later, my other forms, they started pushing out too, and so then, you know, you have this happening, and then you can see all the cold joints, because after that, the blowout right here happened, I thought, I'm not vibrating this concrete anymore, because I'm just compacting it more and adding way more weight, so I'm not going to touch it. Otherwise, I could risk total failure. And then you see stuff like this right here. What happened is I put wood inside my forms because I wanted to keep I had to keep the rebar away from the side of the forms, and that's how I did it, was with the wood. Well, what happened when the stupid forms blew out, they just put so much pressure, I couldn't get the spacers. I couldn't get the spacers out. Well, luckily when we started filling these higher walls, well, it spread the forms apart, and so then I was able to pull the wood out. But by that time, you can see this concrete right here by the side of it had already started hardening. So it was wet right up here, and you don't see those marks in the wall. But right here, that's where the concrete, I was not able to get the concrete down there, so it just dried like that. Well, now what do? Well, I've got a few options. I could just leave it like this and try to frame around it and make it just ugly and really thick and fat and just hide it in my wood framing. Didn't want to do that. So here's what I did. I said, there's got to be a tool out there for me. And there was. I spent, about $800 on this demolition hammer. And it was the right tool for the job. You can see what you could do with that. Look at this guy. Oh yeah, that's easy. Here's why. Because you're demolishing a horizontal surface. No big deal. Well, I was demolishing vertical surfaces. So you can imagine holding that jackhammer up and demolishing this part where the form blew out. Yep. I had to build scaffolding. I had to stand there on my scaffolding, and I had to ride that jackhammer down the wall. We're talking about like an 8-foot wall here, okay? And my blowout came all the way back into here. So I had to chisel all this off with the demo hammer. And then same thing right here. I mean, it wasn't so bad right here. It was maybe, I don't know, 1.5 inches, 2 inches. But right here, I mean, this is 4 inches, 5 inches. So I demoed it. Okay, I basically sculpted a straight wall out of failure of a wall that had failed on me. And then later I came back and I plastered the entire thing. I stuccoed all my walls. They're stuccoed because that's the only way for me to hide those gouges from the demolition hammer. So basically what I'm trying to say is I fixed it, and I fixed it right. It's not going to affect the strength of the walls or anything. It's just taking off some of these cosmetic failures, because when you cut into the concrete, I mean, it's not like you're slamming into the wall this way. You're just coming down and you're chipping it off. So I still got all my rebar in there. My concrete, cured just fine. I got 4,000 psi concrete in here, so it didn't do anything to the strength of the walls by me cutting them back like I did with a demo hammer. It just made it more cosmetically appealing. Because I don't want to live with this. I mean, I have to walk up and down here every single day, and I'm not going to just say, well, my form's blown, I'll just have to live with it. No, I got to fix it, and so I fixed it. And let's see what I have next. Okay, we got through this file. Now let's talk about the steps. Steps. Now I finally, look, you see I got my walls stuccoed. I mean, they came out pretty rough. I'm going to tell you, they came out rough. Here's why. Because as I was stuccoing my walls, the temperature started falling. And I did this at night after school. And so I barely got my stucco on, and I had to start floating it out immediately because then I run out of daylight, and I was afraid it was going to start freezing, so I had to go a lot quicker than I wanted to on this. Plus, I had absolutely nobody helping me on the stucco. I had to do the stucco all by myself, which, I mean, it's fine. Big deal. I don't care. The thing is, I got the walls straight. I got them stuccoed. I mean, the surface is just a bit more rough than you would normally see on a wall. But here's the thing. I can go back and I can put another coat of stucco on. I just didn't do that because my priority was get the steps in. And which I did. You'll see that I got the steps in. And I want to show you my rebar. Look at my rebar. This is insane. So I doweled in on every step. I have 1, 2, 3 rebars going into my wall. And then I tie across, go into the 3 across there. And I took my wire mesh and I bent it in the shape of the steps. And I tied all this together. So, I mean, my steps are reinforced. I'm not just going to pour steps on top of this dirt right here. Here's why. Because this is all backfill. I had no good way to compact. Now, I do have my soil compacted under my platforms, you know, and look how thick that is. Because you're supposed to thicken the edge right there, which I did. And I was able to compact the soil here with my little hand compactor. But even my platforms are doweled into the retaining walls because I've seen a lot of substandard concrete work where they'll just dump concrete between the walls and they don't even dowel in or anything. So then what happens is if your base settles, if your sub base settles, then your concrete's going to fall with it. And I don't want that happening because if that happens, that's major cracks. That's major cracks in the concrete. So even if my sub base right here, even if it settles, well, I'm held up in my retaining walls. My retaining walls are held up in these gigantic footings, these 40-inch wide footings. So I'm not anticipating, you know, if this does move, it's all going to move together. You know, my steps are tied into my walls. My walls are tied into my footings. So if my footings settle, well, it'll all bring this all down together. So I think I'm okay. You know, I'm just going to have foot traffic up here, probably just one person at a time, you know, maybe 2 people at a time. So, you know, really these steps came out commercial quality, but this is just a little residential project. And, I mean, I went wider than I had to. Your minimum width you can go for stairs is 3 feet. I went 5 feet. The reason I did that is because if I'm coming down the stairs with a furnace or with a heater, I want to be able to turn that corner and get in to my door. That's why they have to be so wide. Now, I'm showing you my form work right here. Look, I've got some of my forms that are burnt. Why are your forms burnt? Well, I used these 4 riser forms up here at the top earlier. And I had to torch off my bleed water because there's no way it was going to set up in time for me to finish it before night came on and before it froze. So I got it finished off, got it tarped, got it insulated, and then the polar vortex comes in, you know, because we live here in Colorado. Polar vortex comes in, but I'm okay. I've got my concrete covered, and so then it cured, and then I stripped the forms from these up here, and then I used them up here. Now, look at how I've got them attached. It's okay. It'll keep the forms from going up and down, but I thought, I've had bad experiences with blowouts. This is not going to be enough, which it wasn't. And there's a view from the top. What you're not seeing here is later, I didn't get a picture of this, of course, but later I came back, and on every single one of these steps, I went from here to that 10-inch retaining wall. Bam! Okay, every single one of them. And then I came down with angled braces. And so I've got absolute support in the middle. And then I came with another 2x4, came from down here, and I followed this angle up, and I screwed into every single side here. I did it right here too, on all these. And then I ran one from the floor here, there. So I have a braced it here, in the middle, and on the side. So I had absolute no chance of blowouts, and I did not have any blowouts right there. The only thing wrong, well, I'm not going to say wrong. I mean, the only inconvenience with adding all the extra bracing is then you have to take it off and you're under the gun because your concrete's drying. Well, that's how my stairs turned out. Not too bad. I mean, you can see a few little cosmetic defects, because I had to add some water to these when I was finishing it off, and then I had to add some little, my little stucco techniques, because now I'm an expert plasterer, and I say that with sarcasm. You can see it turned out a lot rougher than I wanted it to, but whatever, right? So I mix my plastering with there and I finish them off. It's not, I mean, this is probably not fit for the Queen of England, but I don't care, right? It's functional. And on the next one I'll do it better. But this right here, I had to torch all my bleed water off, okay? So we hit them too hard with the torch and then it set up on me. So that's what happened. But I'll know better next time. And that's how they turned out. And now you have all the technical aspects of this project. How long did it take me? Well, from the middle of July 2016 to the latter part of December 2016. How many hours did I put in on it? Oh, I don't know. I lost count after probably like 100. I got several hundred hours into this project. How much did it cost me? Oh, you're looking at about 10 grand. Concrete, rebar, lumber. I have tons and tons of lumber left over from all those forms. And yeah, I could probably use it again. So how much would this have cost me if I had paid somebody to do this? Are you kidding me? We're probably looking at 20 grand if I would have paid somebody to do this. But I did it all myself. Okay, I got 10 grand in, but look at the investment. Look at the investment. I tell my wife, I say, yeah, I spent a lot of money on this, but the money's all right there. It's not like we took a cruise and we have a couple pictures to remember it by. No, the money's all right there and it's not going anywhere. So once we sell the house, it's all going to be right there. It's coming back to me. Or if we never sell it, every time I walk up and down those stairs, it's the satisfaction that I'm going to get knowing that I did it myself. And you never know what corners somebody else is going to cut on you. I tried to do everything I could. I tried to make it as strong as possible. Yeah, I did have a few problems, but you know what? I fixed all those problems, and I have a satisfactory project now, a satisfactory outcome. And later, like I say in my other video, I'm going to add on, and this from here all the way out to the alley. You can't see it, but from here all the way out to the alley, I've calculated so I have a 1/4 inch slope per foot. So when I bring my muddy vehicles into the garage, I could just hose them off. All that water is going to run out right down to the alley. And then when we go to sweep our floor, we can wet sweep it, and it will all run down that way. So then that's another reason I had to build this up so high. If you can see, that's my truck tire. That's the existing grade, but I'm way up here now. But when I do my new garage floor, it's all going to flow out like that. And there it is. I mean, it's just, it's exactly how I imagined it. I never imagined having so many problems. Never imagined my forms blowing out. Never imagined spending so much money. I thought I could get away with, I thought this whole project would run me $2,000 or $3,000. Well, good thing I'm not an estimator, because I went over budget. What is that? From $2,000, $3,000 to $10,000. That's like went over like way more than 100%. But you know what? Do I regret it? Of course not. I don't regret it, because I worked so hard and I made it work. I made it happen. And so I don't regret going over budget. I can pay the credit cards off later. Big deal. Just get more side jobs. I don't care. Now I've got something. This is a job that I've done for myself. It's the best job I've ever done. And I'm not giving that work away to anybody else. I'm keeping that benefit. It's going to be with me for as long as I want it. If I go and do a job for somebody else, then they pay me my wage, and then I leave, and I never get to enjoy it for the rest of my life. So this, even though I had to go into quite a bit of debt, and I spent quite a bit of my time on it. Every single day I keep this project, then I'm keeping the benefit. So hopefully I will get to the point where whatever work I do, it's for myself, so nobody else profits from me. I keep all the profit. There it is again. And again. And I'll probably keep this torch here all winter because I don't have the add-on yet. And when the snow comes down, yeah, I've got my little drain here. But unfortunately, the drain's hooked into nothing. I just got a percolation drain. So it's just draining down into the sand, which is fine. You know, I looked at the soil in the summer when it was raining really hard and my hole filled up with water. Well, by the next morning the water was already gone. So yeah, I know it's a little bit different in the winter because the ground freezes and it doesn't percolate so much, but I'm just saying what I'll have to do now until I get my add-on is I will have to shovel all the snow up, and out. And then whatever ice is left, I'll have to torch it off and then just let the water go down in the hole. So I'll keep that torch there all winter. Well, I hope you enjoyed my stair video, and if you got it, if you made it this far with all my rambling, well, then thank you for enjoying my video. That's all I have for now.